Hello and welcome back to Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
That's Scott.
And we are here after an exciting week of NFL Conference Championship action. It was the highest scoring NFL Conference Championship weekend in history. Some really high scoring games, very exciting. Both games going down to the wire. Even the first game, which we saw a blowout, it would seem by the score, but really, if you watch this game, was not a blowout. And it is, of course, the game between the Commanders and the Eagles, in which the Eagles prevailed by a score of 55-23. And what were your thoughts from this one?
I mean, I would tend to disagree. I would consider this one a blowout. I know some of the underlying stats do portray a bit of a closer game, but it just felt like the Eagles were in control this whole time. And, of course, in typical of the fashion of the playoff teams this year, the Eagles, they end up with 21 points of turnovers yet again this week, and that helps to lead to it. On the complete opposite of what the Commanders had gotten the week before, where they'd had 21 points off turnovers off of Detroit to lead them to a win. But the Eagles' offense just looked deadly. Barkley looked as good as he had all year along. He just seems like a cheat code this year. He has been so incredibly good. And what was different for the Eagles this game is that passing attack was alive and well, and it was really the most that you'd seen from it in quite some time.
Yeah, I may have exaggerated a little bit when I said down to the wire, but I think it was definitely a really close game. I mean, the Commanders, the Eagles got out to a lead, and it felt like they were relatively had it under control, but there was a point in the game where the Commanders, they kept pace. They really never let it get too out of hand. And there was a point that they were driving down the field. They're only down 11. End of that third quarter, they get the ball back after their defense makes some really nice plays. And they looked like they were going to score a touchdown the way they're moving the ball. And then that Eckler fumble was the turning point of the game. I mean, end of the third quarter, it was 34-23. Again, it looked like the Commanders were going to score and make it a field goal game. But after that, Eagles just took over and dominated, taking advantage of the Commanders' turnover, scoring 21 points in that fourth quarter and just stretching out their wings here. Eagles, definitely the better team in this one. You could see it from the beginning. Barkley, again, like you said, absolute cheat code, but don't discredit that offensive line. That offensive line is absolutely incredible. They won in the trenches all day long, just dominant in the passing game and in the running game. Commanders just did not have an answer. And then everyone's looking at that play at the goal line where the Commanders, literally, they know they can't stop it. They know they couldn't not stop the tush push. Frank Luru flying over the top, just in a comical gesture there. And it was like, yep, the Eagles are just going to push you around. They're going to bully you, and they're going to force you to play their brand of football. And the Commanders, they had a nice run, but they were not able to play the game on their own terms.
Yeah, Eagles really controlled it. Their defense was opportunistic, and interesting that it's not on the rookie quarterback that all these turnovers came off of. A lot of this wasn't his fault. I feel like he still played a decent game, so you feel a little bit bad for him. The way those turnovers went down.
Definitely, and it looked like he was just as, to me, he looked just as poised as ever. It looked like the team just wasn't ready for it. It looked like he was one of the only players that was ready. Him and Zach Ertz really balling out, and McLaurin played well, also. But a lot of these other guys, it looked like, especially from the run game, not getting much going at all. Brian Robinson really not having a great day. Eckler had an awful day. Jaden Daniels was balling out. He was doing everything he could. But obviously he made some mistakes, of course, as to be expected from a rookie. But to me, I would completely agree. He's definitely not the problem. A lot of this Commanders team, it just looked like they were unprepared for this moment, which is weird because it's like they were not in any higher. I mean, obviously it's a higher pressure game because, if you win, you go to the Super Bowl. Maybe that got to them. But they were, again, like we said, nobody expected them to win this game. I mean, they're 6-point dogs on the road. So you felt like maybe that would, alleviate the pressure. But really seemed like they were just really tense. And they let their nerves get the best of them.
Yeah.
I know you love to see your Eagles go in the Super Bowl. You've been high on them all season, right?
And seeing a game like this makes you feel a little bit better that they truly were the better team. and they
Yes.
were good to watch. Like, although I can say, like, watching Barkley rip off those like really long touchdown runs, like those are fun to watch.
Those are awesome. It's going to be so interesting to see how the Chiefs like respond to that, because Barkley has been unstoppable like all season. No team has been able to stop him. Whether it's he's just pounding you with, good solid gains, or he's busting through for, 40, 50-yard touchdowns. Like, he's just unstoppable. Pass game, run game. He's even a good blocker. Like, it's to the point where it's just like, how are they going to stop? It's going to be really interesting to see that. Also, Jalen Hurts. I mean, I got to give him some props. Like, I was saying he was going to be, if they lost this game, he was going to be the reason why. And he just responded with just a absolutely clean game. I mean, really didn't make any mistakes in this one. His 3 touchdowns running, a lot of it is to tush push, but he has some dynamic plays in this one. Very, very happy what I see from Jalen Hurts. And it looks like it's going to be, he played, remember, in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, he played really, really well, like balled out. A lot of people say he outplayed Patrick Mahomes in that one.
Well, yeah, he would have easily been the MVP if they'd won, easily.
Yeah, and that just is like, it's like, man, the moment is not too big for him. Like, we've seen so many QBs like Lamar Jackson get way more praise than Jalen Hurts, and rightly so. He's, he puts up great stats, but Jalen Hurts, I mean, I think it's, we got to start respecting him a little more, because he comes through in the clutch. And say what you want, but the dude's a winner. Like, he wins. Even when we doubt him, he managed to make the plays that are necessary. And even though he doesn't have the stats a lot of the time, like, that's just not how the Eagles run their offense. And he said it at the press conference, like, hey, coach, let me out of the straitjacket. And I think that's kind of like, he kind of probably gets frustrated too, even though they're winning. Every quarterback wants to air it out. And I think he can do that. He just isn't called to a lot of the time. So it ends up, we end up underrating him. And I'll have to eat it on this one, because I really did doubt him, but he proved me wrong.
Me too. And when you look at the statistics from that 2022 Eagles team that went to the Super Bowl and this one, their offense is averaging more yards per play. Like, they're a more explosive offense than they were at that time. But all the explosiveness is predicated on that run game. Like, that is just so interesting. Like, Hurts and, like, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, they were all there, but they're called to do so much less now. Like, it just takes so much of the risk out of that offense. Like, when you're seeing them not commit any turnovers, like, in this playoffs, and their defense able to scoop them up for them. And, like, that run game has just carried them all the way here.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something that, again, it's like we talked about last week, really interesting, like the revival of the run game. And I think the running backs too. I mean, like, I know we all kind of devalue the running backs after we've seen, like, we realize, the offensive line really is what matters. And yeah, offensive line is the most important part of the entire offense, because everything runs through them. They're not dependent on any other group to be good. But having that elite running back really does make a difference. And that was just an incredible acquisition by Howie Roseman, who, by the way, may be the best GM in the league. Like, some of the acquisitions he made, Zach Bond, new acquisition to the team. Nobody knew who this guy was. He is absolutely balling out. I mean, Cooper DeJean, what a slam dunk pick that was. Of course, Saquon Barkley. I mean, he has just really come through with building this roster. So huge props to him. But you said it, the offense is more explosive than the Eagles was 2 years ago. But the defense is absolutely insane. I mean, they had a good defense a couple years ago, but this defense is even better. I mean, they're top 3 in like every stat this season. That's really like a huge, the biggest difference to me in this team. They're just super solid all through every positional group.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for the Commanders, like, just what a good season it was for them. So far ahead of schedule. We'll have to see what they can do, because they, like we've talked about so many times, like the Dan Campbell quote from last year, it's so hard to get back to the situation. Or like, even looking at the Bills, as good as they'd been when they made the AFC Championship in 2020, it took them until now to get back.
Yeah.
So when you see the Commanders, like, you wonder if they can continue to progress from where they were this year and what they'll look like next season.
Definitely. And from there, we're going to go to the biggest game of the weekend here, the game between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, in which the Chiefs took down the Bills by a score of 32-29. And what were your thoughts after seeing this one? No, it couldn't have been easy for you.
Yeah, that game hurts. It's going to hurt for a long time as a Bills fan. Just knowing, like, going into halftime of this game, like, you were not feeling good as a Bills fan. The defense was getting absolutely torched. And this was a completely different team. Like, completely different type of team Kansas City was. last week than what they've played all year. And it's good on you for pointing that out, too, that they bring this out. And I was very skeptical they could do it again, but they absolutely did. They involved players in ways that they hadn't all year. They ran a different offense, and that was a lot of risk to be able to put it together. It could have absolutely blown up in their face badly, but it was executed super well. Like, the Bills did not have answers for them. They were able to continually move down the field all day long, and just seemed like the Bills just could barely get a stop. They finally did get a couple in the second half to help bring them into this game. And this seems like a difficult game to diagnose as a Bills fan. Like, just pick out what is the one thing that went wrong. Like, I've had a really hard time trying to figure that out myself. Like, obviously, I think the defense didn't help you out as much as they maybe could have. They got a couple stops. And then I think the offense, they weren't attacking the intermediate enough and down the field. I think a lot of the passing game was shorter stuff. And really, I think the number one thing was Josh Allen did not look like his normal self on the ground. The Chiefs contained him so well on the ground. Like, he never scrambled. He couldn't get loose. And on design runs for Allen went absolutely nowhere. And of course, the biggest thing, they figured out how to stop the tush push, the snowplow, whatever you want to call it. The Chiefs found the answer to it and consistently stopped it.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me. That the tush push for the Bills version of it was extremely successful all season. That's what we heard Sean McDermott say. And he said, yeah, it worked all year. So we were going to keep going back to it. And that's kind of the thing that was like, what did I say about the Chiefs? It's like, they save a lot. I think they really do save a lot for the playoffs. They save their best plays. They try to be, but like the Bills could have ran that play by Josh Allen a few times in the regular season and be like, okay, this works. Let's stash this away. But they kept running it. And it was to the where Nance and Romo were like, they were commenting on it, like, oh, he's going to the left every time. And it's like, yeah, the Chiefs were able to stop it at key moments. And it was a lot of like when Allen went over the top to get that one first down, even that could have been a huge disaster when he fumbled that ball. I mean, that is not something you want to see. It's not the goal line here. So I think those plays were really key, even though they were, only 1 or 2 yard plays. But, that could have been a huge difference if they could have come up with just something, maybe a fake, like once in a while to do something different on those plays. I think would have made a big difference. But the Chiefs, man, I mean, they were just lethal. I mean, you could see it right out of the gate. That first drive, they were attacking that middle of the field, which is where Buffalo has been weak, I think, this season. And the receivers, like all of the Chiefs receivers looked excellent. I mean, Hollywood Brown looked excellent. Juju looked excellent. Hopkins looked excellent. And Xavier Worthy making some incredible catches. All the players for the Chiefs came out to play, and they looked like such a balanced team. And the Mahomes runs were absolutely insane. I mean, he doesn't run a ton at all, but 11 rushes for 43 yards and 2 TDs. And some of those like design runs were just beautiful to watch. It's just an offensive clinic, I really think, from the Chiefs and Andy Reid. Great game plan by them and just really well executed by the Chiefs. That's, for me, what I saw on the offense. Just they were just absolutely, they knew what the Bills were going to do on the defense, and they came up with some great plays and key moments to seal the deal.
Yeah, I think those are the two big things for me that I didn't think Kansas City would do. I didn't think they would be able to have the type of offensive output. They did the thing. They scored over 30 points. That they were finally able to do that. And as well, like my golden ticket for them was their defense being able to get off the field on third downs. And the Bills' offense was 35% on third downs. And like even how good Kansas City was, especially on the fourth downs as well, like we just talked about as well. I think that was huge for them. Like, it did not look easy for the Bills' offense, but for the Chiefs, it really did. Like, it felt at times like that game could have been further away. But then you see for the Bills, like, you had that opportunity. Like, with 3 minutes, 30 seconds, you had the ball, and you can't convert the fourth down. And then again, down by 3, you had with under 2 minutes to go, you had the opportunity to go down and win a touchdown. But, I mean, you never know, because, I mean, you can still think back on 13 seconds, like, and all that, like, if they would have given them time left. But, I mean, the offense did have the opportunities. They weren't perfect. It almost seemed to be like Josh Allen, like, didn't play a bad game, but there were times he looked shaky, and it just seemed like they weren't letting him do, I think, what he does best, like, targeting those intermediate areas of the field. I feel like it's what he does really well. And it just seemed like they weren't letting him do that. Like, they just weren't the plays for it. And I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, I also would say they should have really stuck with that run game. James Cook was averaging 6.5 yards a carry. They only gave him 13 carries. It's like, come on, guys. I mean, we talked about, this has been the running back revival. Teams have been winning with the ground game a lot this season. And if your guy's averaging 6.5 yards per carry, you got to churn that out way more. I'd like to see at least 20 carries from him. I mean, he was, that one touchdown play, holy smokes. I mean, it looked like he was going to get clocked at the 5-yard line, but he just inexplicably contorts his body, stretching over the goal line. That was maybe the best play of the game for the Bills. James Cook was absolutely balling out. Allen, I can't put too much of this on him. I thought he played pretty well. Though that throw at the end of the half to Hollins was exceptional. He made some really good plays. But really the last drive for me is where I have most fault with Allen. Like, you're getting the ball, your defense stops the Chiefs, force them to a field goal. You got 3 minutes, all your timeouts, and you're down by a field goal. Like, what better scenario could you draw up for this? I mean, that's a normal drive. You don't have to throw it every play. You can run your normal offense. You don't have to hurry. You have all the time in the world to take this all the way down and get in field goal range, and they only get 17 yards. They throw on the first 2 downs after Allen runs for 12 on the second down to get it on a great play. They throw, and they were erratic throws, incomplete, and then the little 5-yard pass to Amari Cooper. And then that last blitz, which I think everyone everyone at home and in the audience knew Chiefs were going to send the house. That's just what they do. And yet, didn't pick up the blitz, and they forced pretty much just a Hail Mary, which honestly was a pretty damn good throw by Allen to Kincaid. I mean, I don't blame Kincaid for not catching it because it was still a difficult catch to make, but that just goes to show you, like, when it comes down to crunch time, I mean, we saw it last season where Allen couldn't really get him into, I mean, he got him into field goal range, but Bass missed the kick. He would have liked to get closer, and here couldn't even get him, into Chiefs territory. And that just goes to show you, I mean, I think that's what really makes the difference in this one. Where Mahomes, I don't know if it's coaching, because I think Allen is such a great quarterback. I don't know if it's what's the difference between these two. I think it might be coaching. It might be the fact that, the Chiefs have just been in these situations so many times, but the Chiefs have won 17 one-possession games in a row. And so to me, the little things, the little touches, the little details, that's what ultimately makes the Chiefs just that little bit better than the Bills. Like you talked about it, every game these two teams play in the playoffs is close. And their point differential of just total is so close. So the caliber of these teams is so close that it just comes down to those tiny little details that it seems like the Chiefs get right and the Bills get wrong.
Yeah. And like going back to that final drive, like you run your one run play was like a toss crack to Ty Johnson. Your one run play wasn't even Cook because that play is designed for Johnson all year. And then like you had mentioned the Cooper screen. When I looked at that from the all-22 angle, there was one block where he almost scored a touchdown there. That play almost worked because of the zero blitz that Kansas City was sending. But I hated it, like, as I watched it unfold in real time. Like, are you serious? Your play was a screen? Like, that was your play on 3rd and 10? Like, those are just, like, interesting calls to me. But like when you're also saying about Allen and what he has to blame, like some of the stats I heard, like it's just crazy to me that this guy has never gotten past here. Like that they just continue to be his downfall, and that these teams are so close because Allen is first all time in total yards per game, 309, first all time in touchdowns per game, 2.46, and first all time in touchdown to turnover ratio, 5.3 to 1. So like Allen has been incredible most of his playoff career, but it's just like Mahomes and Chiefs have just blocked him so many times. And like you could think of like the drops like back in last year's game, like from Sherfield and Diggs, Bass missing the kicks. Like Allen has been extremely good and somehow it just hasn't broken through.
Yeah, I really, it's just tough to look at because like I think any fan of Buffalo is just exasperated. It's like, well, what do you do? It's like we're come here every season, and it feels like we got a great team, and yet it just can't get past the Chiefs. And some people blame the refs. That's just going to happen. But it's just like, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it looks like, but if it's any consolation, which nothing will really make you feel better about this, this was a year a lot of people said was going to be a down year for the Bills. A lot of people said, hey, you got rid of the bulk of your team, a lot of veteran players. A lot of people, myself included, didn't even have them winning the division. So the fact that they made it here, I know there are no moral victories, but the fact that they made it this far, pretty impressive in a, quote, rebuild year. So, it's just really tough, and it is hard if you're a Bills fan to just 4 times now, you face Mahomes in the playoffs, 4 times you come up close. I guess the first one wasn't really close, but 3 times out of the 4 extremely close games coming down to the final few plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's just super tough about where you go from here. It's like, what more can you do when you felt like you were ascending, you're like finally ascending there, and it felt like the Chiefs were on the decline, and they just pulled out all the stops and looked as good as they ever had. 'Cause, I had thought, it's like, all right, well, they don't have the running game this year, and they did in this game. Their running game was not good, and that was something that really helped them out last year, and then in the last couple of years, was like, all right, I think the Chiefs don't have a run game, and the Bills are going to be able to just stack the back of the field and bottle up anything that they're trying to do down the field, but Mahomes just looked surgical and being able to make like any of the throws he wanted. Like the Bills just weren't able to cover. They just didn't have any answers for their passing game.
Yep, definitely agree with that. All right, and so it concludes another Bills season. So mine and Scott's teams both out this year, but all things considered, pretty fairly successful seasons. I know both of us didn't get where we wanted to go with our teams, but it was a fun year for both of them. Now we just have one more game left, the Super Bowl between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to wait a week before we give you our analysis and predictions of that one. But we still have a little bit more for you here with some takes and some of our rises and fallers for next season. But before we get to that, of course, we need to do our NFL Clown of the Week for Conference Championship weekend.
Everybody loves a good clown, and now it's time to meet the NFL's Clown of the Week for this week.
And this week, the Clown of the Week of the NFL is going to be the NFL rules in general, and we can include the referees in this a little bit. Let's take back to that first game versus Washington, where I just think that's such a stupid penalty. I think Luvu really executed that perfectly, jumping over the top of the pile, and then you get the penalty for launching. And I saw that same penalty called against Pittsburgh earlier in the year, and I thought the exact same thing, that it was executed perfectly then too. And I think it's a really dumb penalty, and I really don't like how it's being called. And it's also just so clown-worthy to me, how the ref is just going on there being able to say, oh, we can award points if we want to. And what kind of rule is that? The ref's going to just decide that they can award points if they want? And then, of course, going on to the Bills game, I think that there's a lot of people out there that want to say that all of these games are rigged in favor of the Chiefs. I don't believe that. I think it's crap. You're never gonna look at the whole picture. There's not that many people. It's so many people that would have to be on that collusion. It's not possible to do. The Chiefs do have some kind of black magic field ball calls, but the point I want to make is about that 4th and 1. I think that everyone can see that Allen got that first down, but the 2 line judges had different marks by 1 yard, and I don't know, maybe it was the first one that got there. It said he marked him short. They should be able to have some kind of technology at this point to be able to show, okay, the ball crossed this line. You think about tennis, how they can track where that ball hit. How does the NFL not have a better system by now than these refs standing at the sideline yards away trying to figure out where this ball spotted, and then the chain gang? Seriously, do we not have a better method than this? Because I think it can be pretty easily proven that Allen got that first down, but because of the huge pile there, it was inconclusive enough with the video, so they couldn't overturn it. So to me, that's just clown with the NFL for all these rules they've got in place right now. I think that they have some serious introspection to do right now. So this week, the NFL rules and officiating as the Clown of the Week.
All right, here we're going on to the little segment we like to call Risers and Fallers. So we'd like to take some time here before we get on to the last episode here of the season where we recap, or we predict, rather, the Super Bowl. We're going to take some time to acknowledge the other teams whose seasons ended a little bit earlier. And the spirit of this is going to be risers and fallers. So every year we see at least a few teams that drop out of the playoff picture and some teams that inexplicably rise and fill those playoff spots. So we're going to kick it off. We're each going to pick one team from each conference to rise into the playoffs and one team from each conference to fall out of the playoffs. And Scott, why don't you get it started with your riser and faller from the AFC?
So in the AFC, my riser for this year is going to be Indianapolis. We're going on 2 consecutive seasons now where they fell just short of the playoffs. I think that Shane Steichen is a really good coach. I still believe that Anthony Richardson could have some potential if they could finally get some things under control. He really has some raw talent. I think they may finally be able to unleash some of that. And they've got the draft capital this year. I think they've got the cap space. I think that they definitely have the ability to make those offseason moves to really hop up into the AFC playoff picture. I'm really looking forward to an offseason for Indianapolis. I think they've just got a lot of potential. So when I look through that list of teams that miss the playoffs in the AFC, they just really stick out to me as a team that I think could really compete next year for a playoff spot. And for my team that's going to miss, I'm going to be choosing the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be in a lot of turmoil at quarterback. I mean, we talked about this a couple episodes ago after the wild card round, thinking about where you go from here in terms of what you're doing. I think that they're going to be stuck in quarterback purgatory continually. I think that you have a good chance to see a lot of what we saw at the end of the season that ultimately was their demise, and that Mike Tomlin's playoff streak will finally run out. So I think Pittsburgh stood out to me absolutely as a team that will fall out in the AFC.
All right, and for me, my riser in the AFC is going to be the New England Patriots. So yes, very much a bottom feeder this season. However, some key couple coaching hires that I think will really turn it around. Of course, bringing back Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator is a underratedly big move. I mean, he is a fantastic offensive coordinator, terrible head coach, but really going to do some great things with Drake May, who I believe is very talented, has a lot of potential. But the big one, Mike Vrabel as the head coach, a guy that played for the Patriots, a guy that knows the culture, that understands it, and a guy that made the playoffs every season with Ryan Tannehill as his starter. I mean, the Titans, there were some pretty good teams there when he was the head coach with not a lot of talent on the offense besides Derrick Henry. So Mike Vrabel, I think very highly of him as a head coach, guy that really understands the Patriot way, and that will bring some tenacity to that team who really has not had any success since Brady has left. And we have seen recently teams go from really, really bad to really, really good in one season after getting their coach or their quarterback. The Chargers, after having a just dumpster fire at 5 wins, hire Harbaugh and they make the playoffs with 11 wins. The Commanders, who were an absolutely terrible team, get their coach and quarterback combo, and they were in that championship game. The Texans last season, where they were a terrible team, get Stroud, get Ryans, boom, we're in the playoffs. And the Broncos, when they got Bo Nix, pairing them up with the head coach, Sean Payton, boom, we're in the playoffs now from being a terrible team. So I think this is definitely possible. I really do like this quarterback combo with McDaniels, and I love the tenacity that Vrabel is going to bring, so I'm definitely taking the Patriots. Also, Patriots are going to be playing on that 4th place schedule, and the Dolphins and Jets, I think they could sweep both of those teams next season. I'm really liking the Patriots. And for my fallers in the AFC, I'm going to be taking the Denver Broncos. I think we've seen now that the sophomore slump is a very real thing. Jordan Love and CJ Stroud having pretty disappointing seasons based on what we thought they were going to be from their rookie years. So the sophomore slump, definitely a real thing. Bo Nix, I don't know how good he can be off script. Now that we have a full year of tape on him, I'm not sure how well he's going to be able to improvise and throw teams off, because he's a guy that had a lot of college experience. So that typically means that he's going to be like a high floor, low ceiling guy. I think that's very much the case. I think what we saw from him in his rookie season is about as good as he's going to be in the NFL for his career. So in a tough division, and one with which the Raiders are going to be getting better, the Chiefs are always good, and the Chargers are good, I think the Broncos are going to be fallers. And with that, we go on to the NFC now. Scott, who are your risers and fallers in the NFC?
So in the NFC, I think there were a few good choices that I could have picked for a riser, but I think the one that sticks out to me that they've just kind of been my team, I think, is San Francisco 49ers. And I'm interested to see like what the lines are going to be, what the media, what everyone's going to think about San Francisco going into next year. This is obviously an extremely disappointing season for them, but I think there's certainly some things that are going to make you hopeful for what is coming up next year. I think was pretty big for them, being able to hire back Robert Saleh as their defensive coordinator, I think is big. They had a very good defense when he was there before, and I think that is going to be an underrated thing for them, that they do have Saleh back. As well as a stat I believe we had brought up here earlier in the season. Back last year, the 49ers had 40 combined touchdowns between McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and Ayuk. And this year, there was 2. So I think that is going to regress to the mean. Maybe it won't be 40 again, but it will certainly be more than 2. And that will be more than enough to be able to pull San Francisco 49ers back into the playoffs. And for the team that is my faller, I'm going to have to be picking the LA Rams. They're a team that were below average on both offense and defense all year long. You're having Matt Stafford, who is 36 years old and has had his worst physical season so far. Like, when I'm watching that offense as it ended the year, it just seems like so predicated on Puka Nacua to be able to do everything. Like, they're funneling that offense through one person, and just Stafford aging, just what I had seen from that team. Like, there wasn't like a super amazing pick. Like, I feel like this team is definitely going to fall, but the Rams just seem to be like the most obvious choice to me, that I don't see that they can replicate the kind of season that they had this year.
Man, you're going straight from my heart here, picking the Steelers and Rams to fall off. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
And sheesh, goodness gracious. All right, well, for me, if I can put that aside, I'm going to pick the Falcons as my risers in the NFC. Our team that I picked to win this division were smited by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. However, Buccaneers, I could have picked them as my fallers. I do think this is going to be a very close division, so I'm not too confident in the Falcons. Again, I think the NFC is a little bit more predictable than the AFC, strangely enough. But I do think Penix showed some flashes. Obviously kind of put in a difficult spot, having to come in the middle of the season. I think a nice full offseason, knowing he's going to be the starter, will do him good. Defense definitely needs to get better, but I think they can really take advantage of the Buccaneers, who are yet again going to be hiring another offensive coordinator. And now this for Baker Mayfield is going to be his 6th offensive coordinator in 3 seasons. I mean, he had Stefanski with the Browns. Next year, he's going to the Panthers with the new offense coordinator. Then the Rams, the new offense coordinator. Then he lands in Tampa Bay. And boom, now a nice year after Tampa Bay, another offensive coordinator. And then, of course, Cohen going to the Jags, going to have to find another one. So just absolutely crazy, the turnover there. So I think the Falcons can definitely take advantage of that. This division is not very strong. The other 2 teams are pretty darned weak. So I do like the Falcons' ability to possibly even get a wild card spot if they don't take the division. So I definitely think the Falcons are going to be on the rise next season. And for my fallers, I'm going to be taking the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings this year won a lot of close games, and I think it's hard to get those kind of bounces 2 seasons in a row. Now, maybe this is just the thing I think that the Vikings do, because I feel like we said this about them a couple years ago too, when they had that great season with Kirk Cousins. But I really am more concerned about their ability to compete in this division that is really, really good. The Lions I still think they'll be very good next season. The Packers, I think, will only get better. The Bears will only get better, especially on the offensive side. So I worry about the Vikings' ability to compete in a really tough division. I also don't know if Sam Darnold can replicate what he did, because we have had 6 years of him and they haven't been good. This was the one outlier. So I don't know if he's going to revert back to his old self. Also, we don't even know if he's going to be starting quarterback next season. How is J.J. McCarthy going to look if he's called to start? just too many unknowns for me on the Vikings. This was a talent-poor team that I think overachieved with great coaching. So, unfortunately, for the Vikings fans, I'm going to take them to be fallers next season.
Good stuff.
All right, and that will wrap it up for this episode. And season almost over here. Super Bowl 59 between the Chiefs and the Eagles, the rematch. Do the Eagles get their revenge, or do the Chiefs make history, becoming the only team in NFL history to win 3 straight Super Bowls? Going to be a fun one. It was a couple years ago. I expect it's going to be back and forth. Can't wait to see that matchup between Barkley and that Chiefs defense. Unfortunately for the Bills and my Packers, of course, my discussed teams are over, so all our biases are out the window. I mean, we did our best not to include our biases in our analysis, but we're going to have no biases coming into the Super Bowl. Going to really look forward to that matchup. Should be one for the ages. And this has been Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
That's God.
And we are tuning out.
Thank you.